Can you hear me back there? There you go. Okay. Evening, everyone. Hi, I'm Richard Piacentini. I'm the president and CEO of Phipps Conservatory and Botanical Gardens. And we are really excited to invite you here, to have you here as host you here at Phipps Conservatory for this really important event. Just like to tell you a little bit about the conservatory. When you came in this evening, you came through the old original part of the conservatory from 1893. And a couple of things I'd like to just set our way of thinking right now. That original conservatory, when it was built in 1893, it was created at a time when people thought there was no limit to the amount of natural resources we could use or the amount of pollution we could produce. In fact, back then they thought we were going to conquer nature. I think all of us here recognize that's not true, and that's not going to happen. But that's the mindset where that original conservatory was built. And from an energy efficiency point of view, I actually think that building is probably the best example of the worst kind of building you could possibly build. Okay? Think about it, a single pane glass house designed to grow tropical plants in a temperate climate. Crazy by today's standards, right? Now I'd like you to contrast that, though, with what we have behind me on our lower campus. On our lower campus, we have 3 of the greenest buildings in the world. All 3 of these buildings are net zero energy. Actually, they're net positive energy. They make more energy than they use each year for all their heating, cooling, and power, all from solar that's on site. They're net zero water. They capture and treat all their rainwater and sanitary water and treat it on site. They're free from toxic chemicals. One of our buildings, the Center for Sustainable Landscapes, has 7 of the highest certifications in the world, and there's no other organization that's even come close to that. And it's 10 years old now. So these are really great examples of what we could be doing and what we should be doing moving forward. They're all fossil-free, and they've been like that for the last 10 years. So we've learned a lot in doing this, but I think probably the most important thing that we've learned is to change the way we think about how we interact with the world. You know, when you think about it, the original conservatory for the first 100 years, definitely being run with an extractive view of the world. Okay? When we took over 28 years ago from the city, we started to really change, start to thinking about how can we do things differently. We started with this this less bad mindset. Okay, like how can we stop doing so much damage? How do we stop some of the damage? That slowly morphed into our thinking about how can we be good? How can we start actually doing things that are good for the planet? And what we realized with both of those paradigms were not going to get us where we needed to be. We need to continue to evolve our way of thinking. And with these 3 buildings, we really started to move towards a more regenerative way of thinking, where we see ourselves in a relationship with everything else and everyone else on the planet and all the other species. We see ourselves in a nested system and recognize that everything we do affects everything else on the planet, and also recognizing how our health and the health and the environment are inextricably connected. And that's really what's been driving us over the last 15 years, is really trying to work on that model and really to try to see ourselves as a part of nature, not separate from nature. And that's I think probably the most important thing we've learned. We love these green buildings. We love to show people that this is what the future could look like. But what I think is really important is to start thinking about how do we change the way we interact with the world. So I'm really excited that all of you are here. So if you have any questions about Phipps, feel free to ask me later on. But right now, I'd like to get this program started by inviting Doug James to come up with an opening prayer. Thank you.
If you don't mind, I won't use the mic.
Yes.
OCEM, Nostalgia CEM. It is true that we're truly grateful to be present here today. My ancestry comes from my Duwamish side. Chief Tsleil-Waututh, the memorial pole here that we're carrying, is our relative, you know, and we're all interconnected. You know, it goes back on my mother's side out to the Tsleil-Waututh people. You know, so then they're tying into Chief Nanaimo's side. But anyway, it shows how the web of life intertwines us. You know, but we just want to move on forward, and I want to get things rolling here. My Indian name is Sitki Kadam. My wife, Siamawit, you know, she's been riding with us for a few journeys now. And so I'd like to thank each and every one of you for allowing us to share a table with you and a breath of time here. So with that, I'd just like the Creator to bring the blessings down upon this land, asking that you touch the hearts and souls of each and every one, from the youngest to the eldest, that it's for these young ones that our breaths, our words are going to be heard, and that we can ripple across this nation to make a difference, to help improve what's happening around us with the climate change. If we don't stop it, everything's going to be with palm trees and everything growing here in the heat. So I just asking for the blessing upon the food, the blessings upon the drinks that you have. Water is life. Water has memory. Water wants to be appreciated. And it's really important, you know, that we appreciate the water that we have, because it's going to get less and less. It was prophesied that water is going to be more expensive than gold. And that's going to happen if we can't slow it down or stop it. So I just want to lift up the blessings to each and every one of you. Now I'd like to share a shaker song with you, a prayer song with you at this time. Oh. Oh, 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 oh. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug and Siamawit. Hello, everyone. My name is Beka Economopoulos. I'm with the Natural History Museum, which is a traveling project that leverages the power of museums and history and monuments and movements for climate and environmental justice. And we're happy to be back here in Pittsburgh again and at Phipps specifically. Thank you, Richard, so much for opening your doors to us. And happy to be co-sponsoring this panel with the Breathe Project. Tonight, Doug's song really moves me to a tone, a spirit for tonight's event that feels a little somber. But I'm hoping that by the end of this event, hearing from these amazing grassroots leaders from across North America, you will feel inspiration and strength because they are our heroes and sheroes. We are at a crossroads for civilization. The havoc of floods rage Puerto Rico and Alaska, and wildfire smoke smothers the western U.S. as we stand here tonight. Also tonight, the world's energy ministers are convening with business leaders and scientists to discuss investments in clean energy technologies and solutions for the climate emergency. We need solutions, but those solutions are not only technocratic. As Richard alluded to, they're also about changing the way we relate to the land and each other fundamentally and challenging the logic of extraction of life, labor, and land that has guided and undergirded the twin projects of colonialism and capitalism and gotten us into the mess that we face today. On the agenda in the ministerial are some technologies that are being discussed as clean, but we are calling them false solutions. Those are technologies like carbon capture and sequestration, hydrogen power derived from fossil fuels and fracked gas, and other fossil fuel perpetuating technologies. And what you're missing in the ministerial is the voices of the communities on the front lines who are feeling the impacts of those technologies and of our fossil fuel dependency. And they don't have a seat at the table, but we want to hear from them because they are not only impacted communities who will share very somber stories tonight, they are also the champions who are developing the strategies and the grassroots power and the alliance of earth, sky, and water protectors who are going to make it so that our children's children's children have a future. I'm going to introduce briefly each of our panelists, and I will say that this event is a part of the Clean Energy Justice Convergence taking place this week, a series of events and actions and expeditions ranging from tours of regional gas, steel, and petrochemical infrastructure to a student strike that happened yesterday, and today a totem pole journey event where Doug and Siamawit and Freddie and a delegation of more than a dozen Indigenous leaders from the Pacific Northwest and the Southwest and the Northeast have come together with organizers from the Gulf South and here in Appalachia. So tonight you're going to hear first from Jillian Graber from Protect PT, and then Jermaine Patterson from Women for a Healthy Environment. And then we have Heaven Sumski from Center for Coalfield Justice, Yvette Arellano from Fence Line Watch, and Rueben George from Tsleil-Waututh Nation and Sacred Trust Initiative.
I have to represent the men. All the beautiful.
The feds are in the house. All right. With that, I'm going to invite Jillian to take over the mic. Everyone on our roundtable is going to begin by sharing their stories.
Can everybody hear me okay? So I'm Jillian, and I wrote down my story that I'm going to share with you today. I am one of the co-founders and director of Protect PT. We're a small grassroots nonprofit about 45 minutes east from here. And we were founded in late 2014 by a group of neighbors. I just want to warn you ahead of time, I'm a crier. I've been told that these are not tears of weakness, but passion, strength, and also I'm a really pissed off mom, and that's how it comes out sometimes. So in late 2014, we found out about a well pad that would be built less than a half mile from my home. And we as a family had already been exposed to air pollution from our neighbor. You know, you live in a neighborhood and you come to there and think it's going to be the best neighborhood for your kids to grow up. They're going to be able to ride their bike on this wonderful road, and there's an ice cream shop up the street and a park where they can fish, and then you're poisoned by your neighbor. So that's what we started out with here in Westmoreland County. So that began a 1.5-year long battle of a contentious legal fight with our neighbors. You know, I learned really quickly that I can't depend on the local government to do anything. I can't depend on the state government to do anything. You know, I learned about the Clean Air Act and what it meant and how it was established to protect my rights. I learned that we here in Pennsylvania have a unique amendment in our Constitution called Article 1, Section 27. They call it the Environmental Rights Amendment. We have a right to clean air and water. And I learned that none of that really mattered when you're a small mom and your kids are being poisoned and nobody cares. But we found a really good lawyer and we settled our lawsuit and then found out about the well pad that same week. So we called our lawyer. He was a professor at law, of Pitt Law, and he was super knowledgeable about the environment and the issues. And we asked him what we should do. And this is what he told us. He gave us this really great formula that we still use today that's really become the backbone of our organization, what we do. So one, start gathering supporters. So I followed the school bus up the hill and handed out flyers to all the moms and let them know about the well pad. And I quickly got emails, texts from my neighbors that I had never met before, saying, we want to fight this with you. What do we do? How do we help? So I quickly gathered supporters. Then you start gathering the information from the DEP, from the local government, from the school, from leases, and most importantly from the company that's planning on poisoning your air. You monitor your community. You air monitor, you monitor for water, noise pollution. Well, nobody was doing that, so we found an expert and we set up our own noise monitoring program. You know, some of the people in this room were very instrumental in helping us with those early resources. You start educating your neighbors. You find factual resources, bring experts, ask for help where it's needed. We found so many people that had been dealing with this problem for the last 10 years and they were willing to help us. You start raising money because the fossil fuel industry has a lot of money, but you have people and there's strength in that. You participate in local government, at local hearings and at public meetings, and ultimately you have to litigate as a last resort. Because ultimately, what I found out is that there's only one language that the government understands, and that is legal jargon. So you will have to hold them to their responsibility, because they're not going to just be responsible for what they're supposed to be responsible for. And while our lawyer, O'Day, went back to Michigan to help the Flint, Michigan water crisis, we are still at it. We have built relationships with other organizations, many of whom are here today. Thank you, friends. We have paid it forward and helped others by learning from our mistakes and our successes. We have learned that, you do all this and you have a solid litigation case and justice doesn't always prevail. And that really pisses me off. But the one thing the fossil fuel industry didn't count on was that I was going to be stubborn and I was not going to be willing to let it go. They didn't know how powerful the plan that I just outlined for you would be. They didn't know that whatever they wanted to build a pad in Southwest PA, if we could help that community fight, we will. They could not escape us. Only when we stand together and fight for what our communities deserve, for what our Constitution guarantees us, will we get justice. We will demand better. We will call out our governments. We will hold them accountable. We will make them do their job if they're not doing it, whether that's through legal means or not. But these large corporations will not pollute our environment. They will not poison my children or my neighbor's children. I will not allow it. And they will not make us.
I can cry too. But I'm going to try not to. Am I projecting okay? Can you hear me? Yes, so I'm Jermaine Gooden Patterson. I am a community health worker with Women for a Healthy Environment. And just to tell you a little bit about that's what we call ourselves, Women for a Healthy Environment. So we are a nonprofit, and what we do is we educate and advocate about environmental exposures and built environments. We have 3 program areas, healthy early child care centers, or healthy early learning centers, healthy homes, as well as healthy schools. I work under the Healthy Homes program as a community health worker. And what that looks like, most times when you see a community health worker, they're typically in a clinical field. But for my work, it's really specific to asthma and air quality. So that just goes to show you that there is a problem without even me telling you the story. So I live in a community in the Mon Valley called Clairton. The Mon Valley consists of several communities. Clairton is just one of them. Surrounding Clairton is McKeesport, Elizabeth, Glassport. Across the river is Braddock. So there are several communities in the Mon Valley. And I will say this, that all of Allegheny County is being polluted heavily, but the Mon Valley is really taking a toll on the pollution. So where's the pollution coming from? So here in Clairton, which I also reside in Clairton, I've been there for 17 years, sits the largest coke works in the United States, U.S. Steel Coke Works. So I want to tell you a little bit about the work that I do. So as a community health worker, what I do is I meet with families. Well, one of the things that I do is I meet with families who have family members, mainly children, because we, Women for a Healthy Environment, we want to protect the children first, right, and their families. And so one of the things that I do is I do something called a healthy home assessment. And basically it's a survey. It's a survey of questions. And it asks families about certain triggers, asthma triggers in the home. And the reason why I wanted to mention that, because it is not unlikely for there to be several families in the family with asthma, in the house with asthma. I actually have a neighbor who has 4 children with asthma. In the school district, there is an asthma clinic. That's unheard of, to have an asthma clinic in the school. Across the river in South Allegheny, which is in Glassport, they also have an asthma clinic. So these are communities that are surrounding the Coke Works. And it's really sad because we have school officials and we have our city government who will protect the steel mill before they will protect the residents. I was at a, I can't remember what the event was. Oh, it was actually, yes. It was, it was actually a meeting about regulations against U.S. Steel, or regulations. And the mayor stood up and I just want to paint a picture for you. The mayor stood up and he just said, he blatantly said that he does not see a problem. The ex-school director, she stood up and she praised U.S. Steel for doing little things like painting the school. Meanwhile, she did not mention that there was an asthma clinic in the school. I'm sorry, I have my notes here. So I also want to talk about a local grassroots organization that I'm a part of, VCAN, Valley Clean Air Now. And VCAN is a small grassroots that exists to protect the health of the residents in the Mon Valley. One of the things that we have done is we have been able to provide air filters for residents in Clairton and some outside of Clairton. We had over 250 applications that were turned in for air filters, but the funding that we received only allowed us to give 50 plus. So that there tells you the great need. And it's just not asthma, it's other respiratory illnesses. There's a high rate of cancer in the Mon Valley, specifically in Clairton. There are other respiratory illnesses that are linked to air pollution, that are linked to PM 2.5. I want to talk a little bit about what it looks like to live in a community that is highly polluted. I mentioned the high rates of asthma, the high rates of cancer. On what I would call a smelly day, you can be awakened at 3 o'clock in the morning by the smells, the stench, irritated throat, irritated eyes, and it's awful. It's awful to have to live like that, and it happens more than we want it to happen, or more than it needs to happen. So these are environmental justice communities. These are communities. Well, I speak about Clairton specifically because that's where I live at. Food desert, poor. Most of the folks living there are poor. They can't afford. There's little transportation. I wasn't as good as Beka. I mean, I didn't write my notes down, so I had to I had to do it right before I sat down. So I'm trying to include everything that I can. So U.S. Steel, they actually pay to poison. And what does that mean? They will take the fines, which are a slap on the wrist, to poison the community. But it needs to stop. Most residents want to see it shut down, and I say, why not? Personally, I would like to see it shut down, but it's a huge piece of land. If you ever have an opportunity, maybe if you've been on the tour there was a tour Tuesday, but I often think about when I'm coming down from 884 on 8th Street, 884 is coming through West Mifflin. If you come through there at night, it looks like a city. And I don't know, it's really unnerving because they tend to do their polluting at night when people are resting. But then people can't rest because it does wake residents up at night. I think that's it.
All right, thank you for that. My name is Sumski. I am a lifelong intergenerational resident of Washington, Pennsylvania, which is just about 30 miles south of here, and what some of us would consider the rural outskirts of the city of Pittsburgh. I am also the organizing director with the Center for Coalfield Justice, which is a local environmental justice organization serving the very southwestern corner of Pennsylvania, Washington, and Greene counties. We work with residents who are facing extraction, whether it be longwall coal mining or oil and gas development. We're working to protect and advocate for healthy communities with thriving economies. We're bringing those conversations to the table around what it means to not have an option for people. I'm the 4th generation in my family to live on our small farm in the county, and I am no stranger to the impacts of oil and gas development in proximity to our homes and to our schools. The fossil fuel industry has extracted everything from our community, from coal, oil, and gas, to diversified economic opportunity, clean air and water, and for many folks, good health. When industry land agents came to our doors at the beginning of the shale gas boom a decade ago, they promised us visions of a flourishing future. They promised us unequivocal economic opportunities for our children. They promised us affordable gas utilities, and they even played on our patriotic hearts in promising us prospects of peace through energy independence as our family and friends fought overseas. I live on that farm now, and I don't have natural gas in my home. There's no billionaires in Washington County. So I ask all the time, where'd it go? Where's all this opportunity? They ensured our safety and promised us that their new age technology would not impact us or our land, as former extractive industries had. In communities where people's homes are still falling into coal mines that aren't even on maps. Within 3 years of this big boom, as I entered high school in 2012, we began to see extensive state budget cuts to our schools. In 9th grade, I had to redo my schedule 2 weeks in because arts weren't available anymore, or driver's ed. It became clear to me at this point that we had been duped. As extracurricular opportunities were stripped from me and my classmates, we could see gas flames in the sky from every single classroom. It wasn't long after that the kids in my community started to get sick. I lost a friend to a rare childhood cancer known as Ewing sarcoma in 2016. My friend's illness began with a softball-sized tumor in the spine of their back. I and others were quite frightened, and I wondered often how we spent so many Friday nights at sporting events, wrapped around each other, singing the alma mater, and having never felt that tumor. Leaders of our school tried to comfort us with promises that our friend's illness was extraordinarily rare, horrible, but rare. By the time I was 23, I had known at least 4 young people in my small rural community who were battling this rare cancer. In 2018, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette reported that there were 27 cases of this rare cancer in our communities. It became very clear to me and to others that something was very seriously wrong. We started to question why such rare cancers were ravaging our communities in such seemingly large numbers. We started organizing with impacted families and asking hard questions to the industry that operates in our backyards and who call themselves good neighbors. We got little to no answers. The more we asked, the more we realized we didn't know, and how little information we had access to about the impacts of the fossil fuel industry on the health of our communities. That year, impacted families asked Governor Tom Wolf of Pennsylvania and their local elected officials not to ban fracking, but to merely halt new permits until a study or investigation could be concluded to look at the potential harms of what was seemingly an issue in our community. They did not deliver on this ask, and reasoning did not resonate. In 2019, after several impassioned pleas and a lot of nationwide press, the state allocated funds to conduct a study to investigate the relationship between sarcoma cancers in young adults and children and oil and gas development. That's still ongoing. Today, there are over 30 cases of Ewing sarcoma in southwestern Pennsylvania, with a timeline reflecting the fracking boom. When the state came to our community and told us that we weren't statistically significant, they told us that there was a 110% increase in sarcoma cancers in the county since 2008, but it wasn't significant. In 2021, research conducted by Christina Marusik of Environmental Health News found that children living near well sites and fracking development had biomarkers in their bodies of harmful chemicals at levels significantly higher than the average American, as far as 5 miles from a well pad. This study was done in my community, and there is not a kid in Washington County that doesn't live within 5 miles of a well pad. We know definitively that fracking poses significant health risks, particularly among children. There are studies that conclude this, and despite all of this knowledge, we face continued fossil fuel extraction and little to no representation of the risks in the face of it being called clean energy. The promises of economic prosperity and safe operation have gone to the wayside as the gas extracted in my community at the expense of our health is piped to the shale cracker plant to produce single-use plastic. An overwhelming majority of people in my hometown have no idea that the sacrifices we have made of our land and our health for the benefit of industry isn't heating our homes or bringing home soldiers, but is producing single-use plastic and polluting the entire tri-state area and the world. Had I known what I know now when I was 15, I probably would have been a little more radical than you see me right now. This is why I organize. Unconventional oil and gas development may look clean across the world as it burns, but to those of us living in the footprint of extraction, it is not clean at all. It is poisoning our children, destroying future prospects of our land, and tearing our communities apart. The people who live in these places are questioning things. You don't hear their voices because they're being muffled. And we need your help. We all live downstream. There is not a town in the state of Pennsylvania whose watershed is not impacted by fracking waste, and not a town in this world that is not impacted by fossil fuel extraction. And so for now and for the future, we organize. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Yvette Arellano. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm the founder and executive director of Tsleil-Waututh, an environmental justice organization based in the east end of Houston, home of the largest petrochemical complex in the nation. And our goal is to stop multi-generational toxic harm. So we focus specifically on the kinds of chemicals that are stored in our bodies, both old and young, and then can pass on genetically because of the mutations these toxics cause. And so our focus is to stop the production, the use, and the emissions of these harmful chemicals. I founded Fence Line Watch at the back end of 2020 when three things started occurring. One, I had spent years organizing in my community, trying to bring community voices to permits from everyone, including Valero Refining to LyondellBasell to ExxonMobil. And there was never a translator. There was never an interpretation service. I come from Houston, Texas, and over half of our city speaks another language at home, in a state where nearly half of the population speaks another language. My first language was Spanish, and as a young kid, I translated for my parents, from talking to landlords to doctors, having uncomfortable conversations about my mom's menstrual cycle while there was no services provided. This is an issue that was very familiar to me. And to see another 6-year-old, 10-year-old, 13-year-old walk up with their mom and translate in front of a table with the state, a petrochemical facility or oil facility, and government officials who are supposed to work on behalf of the people and lack the vital services to communicate basic information about what was coming into the community. And this angered me to no end. Had it not been for one very brave attorney, formerly with Earth Justice, Isabel Segarra, I'll never forget her name, who said, it's illegal. What they're doing is illegal. It's a violation of the Civil Rights Act, and you can file a Title VI complaint. And so there began an entire quest to try and document, take photographs, and even listen to interpretation through devices that sometimes weren't even available to community members because they were forced to turn in a state-issued ID in order to listen to information impacting their communities, our communities. It went as far as myself going to the state agency office and requesting these documents in other languages. And I was made wait by a really wonderful, extremely nice receptionist who said, no problem, I'll be right back. In 5 minutes, we have templates of these things, only to come back 45 minutes later and tell me she was told that I cannot have this. The second thing that was happening in my community was that the voices of women and women presenting people was absent from the table. In the environmental justice realm, just like in any other career path, in any other field, it is still largely dominated by male voices. And so the issues that impact women, everything from our reproductive cycles to the health of children, were largely unspoken of. And as a person who was at the time keeling over in the bathroom, trying to negotiate whether or not I have enough money to make rent or go and see a doctor, these are issues that personally touch us. So it was these 3 issues that drove me to start Fence Line Watch and bring along friends and bring along community members to start organizing in a way that is a little more inclusive, that has a little more voice, and that has a little more push when it comes to trying to foster the right allies from places that we normally don't organize in an intersectional way, in a way that doesn't say, yes, I believe in environmental justice, but I don't believe in immigration. Yes, I believe in environmental justice, but not public schools. These were the types of different pots and silos that needed to be broken, at least in my community, so that we could push forward and show some success. And in 2021, the state of Texas accepted a Title VI complaint. I broke off, I was starting a new organization, and with that, I got even more fervor to continue documenting and continue pushing the state. Because one thing is for us to push for progress. It's another thing to change the rules. And so what we went ahead and did is challenge the state to make or create a rule change inside of their system. Because the system was broken and not working for communities that relied on it. And so we proposed a lengthy list of things that could close, again, a language barrier. Not just for folks who spoke Spanish or other languages, but for folks who have disabilities, veterans who are hard of hearing, folks who have accessibility issues. And we asked the state for a couple of things. We said, look, it'd be great if we had a plain language summary to take all the technical speak out of these permits and tell people, how big is this project? When is it coming? When is the construction starting? And tell me what the chemicals are, and also tell me what those health impacts to those chemicals are. The second was give us interpretation and translation by a third party. Don't allow an oil and gas facility to try and pump us with their Spanish-speaking bilingual staff, which is exactly what they were trying to do. Little did we know that the state was trying to push their bilingual staff, who was not certified, as translators and interpreters. And then we asked for 30 days, for a 30-day period. Tell people that a project is coming 30 days in advance so that we can challenge it in time. We can raise hubbub with our neighbors and come to these kinds of meetings and not have those meetings happen between Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, because that's when people work. And not all of us have the ability to attend these meetings. Luckily, we were able to succeed with language, and we are still in the process. Hopefully, in early 2023, we'll have a final meeting. But the things we didn't garner were water leak emissions. We got that. We didn't get the health impacts. They said it would be too long. We did get translation and interpretation. Unfortunately, it's going to be based on information that the state already has over communities that need it. So historically, they haven't been pushed to have interactions with Spanish-speaking or other communities. So now they're going to use all of that lack of information. But we did get 30 days notice. And for us, every single success along the way meant something. And we are still in that fight, and we're still in that challenge, because for us, in Houston, Texas, home of the largest petrochemical complex, we have 618 chemical facilities in a 52-mile stretch. So it doesn't really matter where you live, you're going to get a whiff of that air. That smells like burning plastic and tires. It smells like sneakers and acetone. And you're right, it does happen when we're asleep. Because those monitors are never on at 3 in the morning. And even though we've perpetually asked for those monitors to be about 4 feet high, the height of a child, we're continuously shut down. And those monitors are placed on busy highways where apparently the biggest issue is diesel emissions and PM 2.5. I'll wrap up and say that the false solutions that are coming our way, everything from hydrogen in all colors to carbon capture and sequestration, those demonstration projects are happening in places like Houston because there's no one to come in and slap their hands as Texas has a climate-denying governor we're trying to unseat. Hopefully we do.
I drove all the way here sitting down, so from Vancouver, Canada, so I'm going to stand up. Well, from the bottom of my heart, to each and every one of you, with peace and love. Those little donuts were really awesome. The peace and love donuts were really, really good. That's what they're called, peace and love donuts, little donuts. I really enjoyed them. But Well, thank you all for coming. I think I don't want to say I'm tired, because Doug and his wife here, they're like my elders, and they're amazing. They don't even get grumpy when I'm driving with them, and we went across the country, and they've been going like 2 weeks longer than me, and they're just amazing. But I just know I'm a little bit tired, because I was like, the creator, when you mentioned, you said good morning, that's what I was doing too. I was walking, hey, good morning. I was like, so a little bit tired, but I love my family here, my auntie and my brothers and uncle, and you guys are awesome to travel with, and the work you do tirelessly, it takes that sometimes in the work we do, because they don't rest. I saw during COVID the TMX pipeline when it was being built, and they had all these restrictions on who could do what and who could work where, and all those 2 years of being shut down completely in Vancouver. You go in the street, nobody is out. But I went over to the TMX sites, and everybody was working. And that's how it is in what we're up against, because there is a normal law that every Canadian American go by, but there's another law for fossil fuel companies. There is. We won in court. They told us we won. They said your information that you gave is completely right in 3 different facts. Okay, we won. No, they said, we're still going to side with the best interest of Canada and build this pipeline. When we win, we lose, and that's what I'm talking about. There's 2 different laws. And the fossil fuels have that. But we have to create change and be innovative and do things that we need to do, like what we have been doing. We have to scare those people, the insurance companies. They're lining up to take care of, and they wrote and they said, we need something like a couple $2 billion of insurance to make the pipeline go through. We scared away 17 of them so far. We did. We have to. How much? 18. Oh yeah, my son was a big part of that. Yeah. 18. And then we go after the banks too. We went to Toronto Dominion is I think it's the 5th, right, son, biggest investor into fossil fuel companies. So we went to them too, and they went right up to the building. But we discouraged them when we showed them the facts. And we saw it and did really good, because they got Leonardo DiCaprio and the Hulk and some of those guys to say, hey, you know what, pull your money out of there, or we're pulling Hollywood's money out of there. So that we have to be innovative and reach out to people and do different things. We did a 1,200-page assessment, a spill analysis, a clean analysis, an economic study, an air quality study, all based on Tsleil-Waututh Nation law, like Lummi Nation does. We did all those things. We went to court, and that was our law, Tsleil-Waututh Nation law, around Coast Salish law, which is the same as Lummi's truth, family, health, and culture, and had the fundamentals of any religious and spiritual belief: love, honor, respect, dignity, pride, compassion. That's what we do to raise a good human being. That's what we do. But still, we keep hitting the wall against them, because they keep putting resources into it. Because even though they're breaking the law, because we know that and we see that, and they argue against us, and they say, look outside, there's fires and snow where it's not supposed to snow, and there's droughts, and there's landslides, and everything's screwing up. 50% of the world's mammals have died. 65% of mammals have died, and what's left of that, 60% is livestock. It doesn't look good for us. And we're telling them, I said, well, what do we have to do to explain it to you? We did it legally, and you still didn't get it. But the thing is, I think a lot of people are sleeping, and they need to be woken up. And I think that's part of it, where we have to get innovative. I tried really hard. I almost did an opening for Pink Floyd on the 15th, the day we left. I was like, I really want to do, because I love them. But I wanted to do it because it touches people. Roger Waters, he is an environmental guy. He's a friend of Rex Weiler, he's the founder of Greenpeace, one of those guys. And I talked to him, he said, I'm going to get it done. But, didn't happen. But that's where we need to get people power and people involved. Because we did as much as we could legally. We did. We're denied. We won once, we lost once, and denied Supreme Court. We went to the United Nations. My kids been there 4 times each at different times. I've been there about 3 times. We exhausted all our legal ways to do it, but we now We have to be innovative on what more can we do? What more could we make people understand and make them understand that our future and their own future generations doesn't look good? Maybe the world's going to be like this. Maybe if you want to breathe in some fresh air, you might be in a dome like this. That's the direction that we're going in. And I don't get it. I don't get where people could be asleep, but then I sort of understand. I was lucky, both my kids went to private school, and they teach them really different because I worked in a public school at that time. My daughter graduated at 15, went to university at 16 with this school, and they taught them different. They said, every single one of those kids, when they graduated, took political science and business. Be wealthy and rich and run things like your parents. If you're smart in a public school, they say, hey, you could be a doctor or a lawyer, but they start to implement these ideas in us when we're little of what we're capable of doing and what is real. What is real, they could tell them, say, no, we're fine. We're fine. COVID came and gas prices went through the roof. They went through the roof. They used that. Do you know what? In their first quarter, when they raised the gas prices this high, no, it's an epidemic, we're losing gas. All the top 5 oil companies had record-breaking first quarters. And they explained that, and still, no, it's okay, it's the American dream, Canadian dream, make money. And our whole community is going, yes, it is. But we have to tap into what people, so they need to think. My uncles, and like my uncles here, they have spiritual rooms that they sit in and pray and meditate. Find a better way for Tsleil-Waututh Nation, Lummi Nation. Sit there and pray. Find a better way to get us out of poverty, to protect our earth, to do all the great things that we did, introduce an elk into our territory, brought back grizzly bears, wolves, flowers, and birds. Our salmon count went down to 6,000 for the whole year. We brought it up to millions. One day last year, I was explaining a couple times today that we had 1 million salmon in that same river. We cleaned in the second busiest inlet. Little Tsleil-Waututh Nation, 550 people cleaning the inlet. Don't ask me how. I have scientists and all those people that have those answers. Look up Sacred Trust or Tsleil-Waututh Nation. But they clean that inlet that clams, first time were harvested in 45 years. Oysters coming back for the first time in 75 years. Herrings coming back. We're doing those things because we're not getting caught up in what society tells us who we got to be, how we got to think, and what we're capable of doing. Yeah, if you're really smart, you could be a doctor or a lawyer. No. We're breaking those barriers, and we're doing it because in our culture and our spirituality and how I teach, if I'm not teaching you to surpass me, I'm failing. And geez, my kids already did. They're young. They already did. They're already doing it, and they're being innovative themselves and creating a better future for their future generations. And that's what we need. It's simple. A car has 4 tires. One represents physical, one mental, one emotional, one spiritual. And that's what we believe is who we are, physical, spiritual, mental, emotional beings. You take one of those tires away, how is it going to run? I tell you, take one tire away of spirituality away from the world, how is it going to run? I tell you, pretty bleak, because how we practice it, Lummi Nation and Tsleil-Waututh Nation, we make those decisions for our future generations and our land and our water and our people, and we've proven it. We have the biggest solar panel farm in the lower mainland of Vancouver. At one time, we had the second best-selling wind turbine company in Canada. We're making those choices for our future generations. We're not asking for permission, but if you get in our way, we're going to come at you and we're going to sue you, and we're going to do everything we can to do that. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that we get our point across, that you're causing destruction to things that we love. I love my son, I love my family. We have a reciprocal relationship, a spirit between one another. But we do with these trees. My grandfather was famous. He's the first First Nation nominated for Academy Award. Chief Dan George was his name. And he said, millions of people want to hear my voice, but all I want is the grass to hear me again. That's true, because that's a spiritual relationship. And I don't say that you have to come and pray with me or anything like that. Your work is a spirituality. How you carry yourself is a spirituality. about prayer, about religion and spirituality. It's just about being good people and having common sense and being and thinking for yourself a better way for your future generations. That's what it's about. And each and every one of you are like that. Each and every one of you think that way or you wouldn't be here. And I tell you, if you think like that and you practice it, you can light a candle and pray. You could pray, and I did yoga. My whole family, my mom used to do yoga. I used to do yoga. My son still does, but anything to meditate, to bring and create that individual thinking and to find a better way. That's what I was taught. Sit down and meditate and find a better way. Our lawyer's really good at it now. And Eugene, they gave me an Indian name called Many Blocks because when we're traveling on the totem pole journey, he'd say, it's many blocks, it's many, many blocks. So they put a name on him, his Indian name's Many Blocks. But that's an inside joke. We're still trying to give Wes a name. Where is he? No. No, he has one. The media called him, what do they? Beardy McGee. The media call him that. But it's difficult. I tell you, 12 years is difficult. Of my life, 13 years of my life, my son too, he's cute. And I'd say, you have to come to this meeting, son. And he goes, oh, I don't want to. Do they have Xbox there? And I said, yeah, they do. But he would play that for about 10 minutes. Then he came and sat in these meetings, and that's why he has traveled the world talking about what we're talking about a better way, because we need it. One unique thing that I thought was pretty cool that when I traveled the world, and I prayed everywhere I went, in Southeast Asia and Brazil and Australia and New Zealand and everywhere, and I got to pray with people. I got to pray with them, and they talk about prophecies. And they say, things are coming really bad. But they said if the Indigenous stand up and lead, then things we have hope. And wherever you're from, you're Indigenous. And we have to be innovative. We can't give up. We have to have hope. We need it. We need it. Sometimes I want to give up. Sometimes I want to stop. My son says this, I won't be the generation that stops fighting. And that's how it has to be. But I appreciate all my beautiful sisters here sharing heart-wrenching stories. Like I sad because I was sharing pictures with my friends over the table, and I was showing them places where I swim that I put my snorkeling gear on, my flippers, and then I have a spear gun, and I sneak up on a 25-pound salmon, and I shot it, and I was like, wow, and I took it home and I ate it. It was the most beautiful thing. Crystal clear water. You can see from here to the wall, it's so clear. And here, this river is pitiful. It shouldn't be like that. If we could change, that inlet is the second busiest inlet, and it has uranium, it has coal, it has chlorine, it has cement factory, all sulfur, all leaking into there, and we're cleaning it and making it better. I know you could do that here. That's how we become innovative. That's how we become innovative. Sometimes I come up with ideas, and I'm really blessed because I have two really super smart policy analysis people, a couple lawyers that are really smart and feed me all this information. They're their brains, and I'm the least smartest in the room. They just make me sound really good. But we'll sit down and be innovative collectively. We'll go do a retreat and we'll stay together and we'll say, let's come up with something. Let's come up with something. They're methodical. How they can manipulate our constitutions. How they can manipulate the courts. How they could tell, here's what they said in the Kinder Morgan AGM when they sold it to Canada, because we discouraged all investors not to buy that pipeline, so they couldn't sell it. They said, the CEO, Richard Kinder, stepped down, but the new CEO stood up and he said, we couldn't sell it. For 2 years we tried to sell it, so we made Justin Trudeau in Canada buy it. And that's what I mean. They do things like that. They were the same good old boys that have been running things for a long time, still run things. Because Trudeau had promises about creating change. Once he got in there, he found out pretty quick he don't run nothing. And I know that because I see it and I sit with them. And I know industry because I worked against them. And look at how beautiful this is. I can't believe how green Pittsburgh is. I thought Vancouver was green. You have a really beautiful green city. It's so beautiful. It's so green everywhere. Everywhere. You love it. You love it. You, like me, have a reciprocal relationship to the lands and the waters and the forest like I do. You don't have to be spiritual, but you might think I am. It's got to be a good human being. And you have common sense, and we need to teach the rest of the people in our country to have the same common sense to try to do something about it for their own future generations. And for those little donuts. Thank you very much.
How do you follow that? I had the great honor of speaking with each of these panelists over the last couple of weeks and hearing their stories and feeling fired up and inspired. And I just want to ask each of them maybe if they would share a little bit for a closing question. We don't have much time, so we'll keep these remarks brief. But I opened up the newspaper this morning and I saw a couple of headlines. One of them was week-old news, but I read it this morning. And it was that in a parish in Louisiana, Rise St. James had won their fight and got the permit denied on a Formosa chemical. And that was a David and Goliath fight, and they won. The second headline was about the side deal that's been in the headlines a lot with Joe Manchin as the compromise to get a climate bill passed. And in that side deal, they proposed to reform the permitting for these toxic extractive industries to fast track projects in what we call sacrifice zones. Isn't that an incredible term? Like some of us are better than others? And if we continue down this path, the whole world is a sacrifice zone. So in this headline, they said, that side deal is probably dead on arrival because the Republicans don't want to reward Manchin for enabling that climate bill. So to piss them off, they're going to defeat the permitting regulations that the fossil fuel industry wants. And there's some circular logic, but I'm all for it. So it was pretty nice to see the news and feel like there's some successes. There's some victories. And we heard about a couple tonight. And I want to ask our panelists maybe to close with, how do you find your strength? What inspires you to keep going?
I find my strength from my children and from other people that are here. Yeah.
So I find my strength from my community. And my community is my family and those around me. I feel like I was called to do this work. Because I didn't ask for it. And so I can't stop.
All of that. But also for me, I was the first in my family to graduate from a 4-year college, and I think that about halfway through that, I was asking myself a lot of what I wanted to do. What did success mean for me? I didn't want to be a doctor. I didn't want to be a lawyer. I kind of wanted to raise hell. And when I was in school, I felt like I was learning a lot about institutions that put me and my family where we were and that made it so hard. And so I started to think about my success of how I could pay homage to the sacrifices that were made before me that got me there. My parents are here tonight. They followed me here from Washington. But for me, it's really paving the way, right? Like I don't do this for myself. I do this for those who are going to come behind me and everyone that went before me that made it possible. And one of the ways we organize is like I do a lot of speaking with like colleges in the community and things like that. There are a lot of people living in the face of fossil fuel extraction whose families work for industry. They're scared too, and they can't speak out. And so for me, I try to think about them. And as it's hard to hear their voices, it doesn't mean they're not there. And I think about a lot of the people across the world that would be speaking out if they had the privilege that I do to have the access to the language and the ability to sit up here today and do that. And so for me, it's easy to say for others. I know that's what I'm saying, but that's what it feels like.
We have no other choice. I mean, nobody's gonna do it for us. People consistently complain, if you're not happy, do something about it. And so we're trying to do something about it. And I wanna be a part of that something because in a city like Houston, there are other environmental organizations, but they're captured by big oil interests. And that's something that moving forward, if you live in the city, be very mindful and careful about who you align yourself with to make sure that you're not being placed as a target. So I do this because I have no other choice. I can't have children anymore. There are no children for me. So it is for my community. It is for the 10-year-olds who are translating for their parents. I can't do this alone. So why not bust open the doors and get as many people in those doors as possible while I'm still here? And then I'll pass it on to the next group of people because that's what I want. I don't want one other person. I'm not special. I want everyday people to stand up and help, you know? One person doesn't cook a dinner, an entire group of people cook a dinner. And that's what we all should be doing together because if you rely on one person in your community, that person will burn out. I don't want to burn out.
Thank you. Our culture and our traditions, they help us, for sure. I said a prayer, and I said, I think it was when we lost in court, and I was just upset. And you put so much into it, so much resources into it, and even though we win, we still lose, and it's just like, what do we do then? What do we do? We just won, and they told us we lost. I said, this is BS. I said, show me some hope, Creator. And there's 2 bridges that go from Vancouver to North Vancouver, and they're pretty long. It takes like, I don't know, 5 minutes to drive across. So I was driving across and I was saying this prayer, and then the traffic slowed down and it was getting bad, and I got to the top, and it's all concrete, and it goes over the inlet, so the inlet's really windy, and you have all these cars going through nonstop. I think there's I can't remember, 500,000 cars go over that a day or something ridiculous. And so when it slowed down, I said, just show me some hope. I saw this dandelion growing in the corner of the road. And I was like, holy smokes. I said, of all the elements of the cars going by, maybe a car went by and threw some dirt to the side off its tires. A car went by and a little seed landed there, germinated, and despite all the exhaust and maybe the rain wasn't the perfect place for it to grow, but it didn't matter. I took that sign as hope because it grew there. It just fought to grow and to have life. And I said, thank you, Creator.
So when we talk about solutions to the climate emergency, and we talk about technologies that are not renewable, that are hydrogen power or carbon capture, industry and technocrats will call these people externalities. It's an economic ledger, and they don't register. These panelists represent frontline communities, communities on the front lines of environmental destruction, of poor decisions and greed. But they are also the front line of defense for the earth, air, water, and the future generations. And that's something that we've heard a number of times on this panel. The generational thinking that is required for us to make good choices in alignment with the good people we are. We also heard about ancestors and family and descendants, not just as blood family, but as chosen family. And that's what's gonna get us through these hard times out the other side to that green vision of Pittsburgh and the rest of the world.
Yep.
So, in conclusion, I would like to invite all of our panelists to stand. And I would like for all of our audience to stand. And please give them, our front lines of defense, our champions, our heroes and sheroes, a standing ovation. And I know that many of you are in the audience, so I want you to turn to each other too, because there are champions throughout this room. Thank you for joining us tonight. We are so honored that the House of Tears Carvers of the Lummi Nation have brought a totem pole here, driving from Washington State, the Pacific Northwest of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, across 3,700 miles to bring hope and healing and prayer for a future for all life on Earth. So you're invited to go outside and visit with the pole, and maybe Uncle Doug would be willing to offer a prayer there. And thus concludes tonight's roundtable. Thank you.